Okay, so نبدأ بالحديث الرابع إن شاء الله. من يريد أن يقرأ? Anyone want to read? Or do you want me to read for this one if you haven't prepared?
Are we just going to do the munakasha now?
No, we decided that we'll just go into the next hadith.
أقرأ.
Okay, go on.
عن أنس رضي الله تعالى عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال يتبع الميت ثلاثة أهله وماله وعماله فيرجع اثنان ويبقى واحد يرجع أهله وماله ويبقى عمله. حديث متفق عليه.
Good. Are you able to translate it?
There we go. On the authority of Anas radiallahu anhu regarding Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said,
You'll say from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
From the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam,
That
he said, يتبع الميت. Is that تبع يتبع?
تبع يتبع, which means to follow.
Oh, okay. Death follows. Following death, there are three things. Is that right?
Okay, so يتبع الميت. So here you have to see what the fi'l, fa'il, and the maf'ul is. It's very important to accurate translation. Yeah, if you get the fi'l, fa'il, maf'ul mixed up, then your translation is going to be all over the place. So يتبع الميت. So mayyita is what in this sentence? Fa'il or the maf'ul?
The maf'ul.
Okay, good. So something's following the mayyit. Mayyit is a deceased person. Someone has passed away. You call them a mayyit, isn't it? So yatba'ul mayyita follows the dead person or the deceased. What follows them? Thalathatun.
Three things.
Yeah, three things follow the deceased. And what three things are they?
His family, his wealth, and his deeds.
Good.
فَيَرْجِعُ الثَّانِي, and two return.
Good. فَيَرْجِعُ رَجَعَ يَرْجِعُ, to return. So two things return.
وَيَبْقَى وَاحِدٌ, and except one.
وَيَبْقَى. ما معنى يبقى?
Oh no, one remains, sorry. One remains.
No.
يَرْجِعُ أَهْلُهُ وَمَالُهُ, his family and his wealth return. وَيَبْقَى عَمَلُهُ, and his deeds remain.
Good. وما معنى متفق عليه?
معناها it's agreed upon by Imam Muslim and Imam Bukhari.
MashaAllah, good. Okay, so just to give one quick overall translation. يتبع الميت ثلاثة. Three things follow the deceased. يتبع الميت. ميت is the maf'ul. ثلاثة is the fa'il. So now, what does it mean by ثلاثة? They're going to be clarified in the next three words. So that's why ثلاثة has a dhamma because of the fa'il. And the next three words are the clarification of the fa'il. So that's why they also have a dhamma as well. In Arabic, we call that the matbu' and the tabi'. So the thalathatun is the matbu', which is being followed in terms of i'rab. Ahluhu wa maluhu wa amaluhu is the tabi'. This is following the i'rabs of the matbu'. Okay, so ahluhu wa maluhu wa amaluhu. So these are mudaf ilayhi structures. Ahluhu, his family. Wa maluhu, and his wealth. Wa amaluhu, and his good deeds. فَيَرْجِعُ اثْنَانِ. So it's not, you won't read it as فَيَرْجِعُ إِثْنَانِ. So this hamza is a hamzatul wasl, meaning if there's something before it, you ignore the hamza. فَيَرْجِعُ اثْنَانِ, and two things return. وَيَبْقَى. Which bab is yabqa on? Anyone?
بقي يبقى سمع يسمع.
Okay, good. سمع يسمع. بقي يبقى. بقاءً, which means to remain. وَيَبْقَى وَاحِدٌ, and one thing remains. So what returns? So two things return and one thing remains. So what are the two things that return? يرجع أهله وماله. So meaning, so what returns? أهله, his family, وماله, and his wealth. So meaning those, so his person's family goes to them with the graveyard, but the family returns. Person's wealth goes to them, goes with them to the graveyard when the person dies, but the wealth returns as well, back. And what he means by that, he'll explain. The Musannif will explain. وَيَبْقَى عَمَلُهُ, and his good deeds remain with him. Meaning the only thing that stays with you in your grave are your good deeds. And this hadith has been recorded by Bukhari wa Muslim. Okay. So now let's go through the explanation. Adam, do you want to try and read the first line?
From تبع, yeah?
Yeah.
تبع حامد خالدا أي مشى خلفه والمضارع يتبعه.
Able to translate?
So Hamid followed Khalid. That it walks under him.
So khalfa here, khalfa means behind.
Oh, behind. Sorry, behind. Yeah. Under, is that tahta? Is it right?
Yeah, under is tahta.
Khalfa is behind, right? So it follows behind. And the mudari is yatba.
Good. Okay, so it's, just see how you explain things in Arabic. So tabi'a means to follow. So Hamidun is the fa'il, Khalidan is the maf'ul. So Hamid followed Khalid. So how would you explain that in Arabic? So author is saying, ay masha, meaning he walked. So meaning Hamid walked khalfa Khalidin. Hamid walked behind Khalid. So that's what it means to follow someone, isn't it? When you walk behind them. Yeah, so khalfahu means behind. What's the other word? There's another word in Arabic for behind. Anyone know?
Tahta.
That's underneath.
Oh.
Anyone know the other word for behind?
Akhir.
No. Okay, the other word for behind is.
Are you Googling it?
Am I Googling it? Sorry, is that what you said?
Oh, no, I thought you were Googling it.
Oh, no, I'm just trying to share my screen. Okay. The other word for khalfa is behind is wara'a. Wara'a. Have you guys heard that word before?
Is that more common than khalfa?
No, both is fine. Both are usable. Wara, it comes in the Quran many times as well. Wara'ahu. I don't know why my erase is not working. Okay, so yeah, wara'a is another commonly used word. Okay. So tabi'a yatba'u bab sami'a yasma'u. So tabi'a sami'a yatba'u yasma'u. So this is what bab is from. Okay, so now who wants to read the next line?
No, I do.
Okay, go on.
الميت ضد حي وجمعه موتى. الميت means the opposite of life or hayat or alive.
Yeah, life or alive, yeah.
And its plural is mauta, death. Or
Okay. Yeah, so mauta, so mayyit is a single person that's passed away. Yeah, so when one person passes away, you call them the mayyit. But if you're talking about many people that passed away, you call them mauta, which is the plural. Mauta is the plural of deceased. Okay. Al-ahlu. Now what's al-ahlu? Al-aqarib. What does aqarib mean, anyone?
The ones who are close to him.
Yeah. So aqarib literally translates to relatives. So this is an important vocabulary you guys should know.
Al-aqarib. Like qurb, dhul qurba.
Yeah, so it's from the word qarib, yeah. So close.
Right.
Yeah, so al-aqarib, even in modern Arabic, that's how you say relatives. Al-aqarib is relatives. Okay, so mayyit is the diddul hayy, opposite of living or alive, and its plural is mauta. And within the ahl, what does it mean by ahl? Meaning your relatives, your close family. Okay, baqiya. Now he's going to explain baqiya. What does baqiya mean? So these are things that you have to pick up from this book. So if I was to ask you, explain what does baqiya mean in Arabic, you'll be very stuck, isn't it? Like, how do I explain that in Arabic? Yeah, so you need to pick up these tricks. Not tricks as such, but your ability to express yourself. So baqiya ma'nahu lam yarji'. He didn't return. So remember what lam does. What does lam do to a muf'al mudari'?
It takes it back to its present tense meaning. No, it's a past tense meaning. Sorry.
Okay, good. So yarji'u. How would you translate that, Kausa?
Returning. One man is returning or returning.
Yeah. So yarji'u means he is returning. So if I had a lam, how would you translate it now?
He's not returning.
Yeah, or he didn't return. Turns it to past tense verb, isn't it?
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah. And what else does it do?
It has extra emphasis.
Nope.
Oh, sorry, the sukun at the end.
Yes, so it gives a sukun at the end. So lam, it does two things. Number one, it puts into its past tense meaning and then gives a sukun. So baqiya ma'nahu lam yarji'. So to remain, what does that mean? Lam yarji', he didn't return. Wal mudari'u yabqa, and its mudari' is yabqa. Okay, so now it's going to explain what does it mean by yatba'ul mayyita. This is very simple stuff, isn't it? Is it simple to you guys, or is it difficult?
It is, yeah.
Adam, is it simple? All this stuff?
It's okay.
Okay.
Just the vocab, some of the vocab.
Yeah, something. It's just a few new vocabulary words in this I haven't come across before.
Okay. Okay, so yatba'ul mayyita follows the mayyit, the deceased. What does that mean? Ay yadhhabu khalf al-mayyiti. Adam, why does mayyiti have a kasra?
To be mudaf ilayh of khalfa, wouldn't it?
Okay, good. Yeah. So yatba'ul mayyita, what does that mean? Ay yadhhabu khalf al-mayyit, meaning he goes or walks behind the deceased. It goes behind the deceased, or walks behind the deceased. Yeah, so khalfa is always mudaf to the next word. So whenever khalfa comes, its next word will be the mudaf ilayh with a kasra. Khalfa al-mayyiti, behind the deceased. So okay, so ayyadhabu khalfa al-mayyiti ahluhu wa maluhu wa amaluhu ila al-maqbarati. So I'm going to translate this as ahluhu, his family, wa maluhu, his wealth, wa amaluhu, and his good deeds. Yadhabu khalf al-mayyit, walks or goes behind the deceased, ila al-maqbarati, to the grave. So see how I translate it? So first I translated the fa'il, his family, his wealth, and his good deeds. Then I translated the verb, walks behind the deceased. And then I translated ila al-maqbara, the end part, to the graveyard. So maqbara is the graveyard. And so now we understand how your relatives, they go with you to the grave, your family, and we understand how your good deeds go with you to your grave. Then how does your wealth go with you to your grave? No one takes their bank accounts with them. Kausar, can you explain what does it mean by that? By wealth?
Al-Abid.
What's Abid?
I thought it was a slave.
Yes, Abid is slaves.
What?
And from amongst your wealth is Al-Abid, your slave. So your slaves will go with you.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so these three things, they go with the person when you die. Your family go with you, your wealth goes with you, and also your good deeds. But it's only the good deeds stay with you in the grave, everything else leaves you.
It's a good hadith, this one. It's a spot. I think the first 20 hadith are quite short like this, but then the next 20 are very long.
Yeah, the first 20 are very easy. Okay, any questions regarding this hadith? Anything I've done so far?
Why is it anin nabiyyi? Well, you know the other hadiths, they say عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال, like why is it in this one anin nabi?
Okay, good. So an, when you narrate something from someone, you can just say an. So an Anas radiallahu anhu, anin Nabi. So this will actually mean narrated from Anas, who narrated from the Prophet. That's what it means. That's one way you can say it. Or another way you can say it is an Anas radiallahu anhu, qala Rasulullah. So narrated from Anas that the Prophet said. So it's basically the same thing, but you can say it in two different ways. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Did my answer make sense?
Is this just like a new different technique of writing style that different authors used?
Okay, this isn't the writing styles of authors, writing styles of muhaddithin, of hadith scholars. So if you go to the original hadith books, this is how you'll find that the hadith is worded. And Anas radiallahu anhu, anin Nabi. So narrated by Anas from the Prophet that he said. Okay, did you get that first explanation?
Yeah.
Okay, the second thing now, there's a technical difference here. And this is, we're going into usul al-hadith here, principles of hadith. So I'll just explain it because we've got time. And it's a very simple concept. Okay, when a narrator narrates from another person using an, so here, Anas is narrating from the Prophet, isn't it? And what's he using to quote the Prophet? An, yeah. When a narrator narrates from another person using an, the technical difference here is that the narrator, it's not necessary that this narrator heard it from the Prophet directly. Yeah. So now let's say if Anas did not hear this hadith directly from the Prophet, but he heard it from Abu Hurairah, for example. Yeah. And Abu Hurairah heard it from the Prophet. Using the word an, Anas would not be lying. Does that make sense?
Oh, I see.
So let's say Anas radiallahu anh said, I heard the Prophet saying this, but he actually didn't hear the Prophet saying, he heard it from Abu Hurairah, who narrated from the Prophet. Then Anas radiallahu anh would be lying. He'd be saying that because he never heard it from the Prophet. Yeah. So when a narrator uses an to narrate from another person, there is a slight room or a possibility that he could have heard it from another person who heard it from the Prophet. Does that make sense?
Okay, why wouldn't they have narrated? If that is the case, why wouldn't Anas mention the person he heard it from?
Because it's not necessary. So let's say he heard it from Abu Bakr. Is Abu Bakr a trustworthy person?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there wouldn't be any reason to mention that I heard it from Abu Bakr, who heard it from the Prophet. He'll just say, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, it's narrated from the Prophet that he said this. Does that make sense? So let's say if I said something in class to you guys, and Adam next lesson was asking, so then so you could say, the teacher said this, but you actually didn't hear me say it, but Yasin told you that I said it. Does that make sense? You don't have to actually narrate, oh, I heard Yasin, who heard the teacher say this. It's just an unnecessary step, isn't it?
What if Yasin is known to kind of not say it exactly as the teacher said?
Yeah, so now in the Sahaba, would that be a problem?
Yeah, like it would be a authentic, like be less strong, wouldn't it?
So like, would the Sahaba have changed anything from the hadith?
No, of course not.
Yeah, so that's why when it's regarding the Sahaba, this isn't an issue. Does that make sense?
Okay, so if there's someone after the Sahaba.
Yes. So now the problem arises in this where later people do it. So this is we're going into usul hadith now. Now, when later people, narrators of hadith, so let's say I narrate from my teacher, yeah. So let's say I heard from this person, or says I use an. Now there's a slight possibility I heard it from someone else who heard from this teacher. Does that make sense? So now the job of the hadith scholars is to determine, the person that I'm narrating from, did I ever meet him? Was I living in the same time period as him? That's possible for me to actually hear this person. Does that make sense? Are you guys understanding what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the technical difference of an. Okay.
Is hadith studies really hard?
So in hadith studies, there's two aspects to hadith studies. One aspect to hadith is sharh al-hadith, which is the explanation of the hadith. So this is a field of hadith where you go into deep explanation of hadith, and there's like voluminous books and books and books written on just sharh al-hadith, just explaining the meaning of the hadith, what the Prophet meant. So that's not that hard, but it's something that, you know, some scholars get into. But the other other science related to hadith is called usul al-hadith, which is when you basically analyze the lives of the biographers, not biographers, analyze the biographies of the narrators of the hadith. So every hadith comes with a chain, isn't it? A narrated from B, who narrated from C, who narrated from D, who narrated it from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like that. So this is what you call the science of al-jarh wa ta'dil, where you critique or establish the integrity of narrators. So that science is extremely difficult, and it's not for everyone. So to become good at it, you need to literally dedicate your life to doing it. It's a very complex science. So it's called al-jarh wa ta'dil. Maybe we'll study some one day, inshallah, after we get our basic Arabic done. Okay, so next session, what we'll do munaqasha. We'll practice talking about both of these hadiths. So I'll ask you, what does this mean? What's the opposite of this in Arabic? And you're going to try and respond to me in Arabic as well. So that's why practice, you must know the vocab of every single lesson. And also try and, in your spare time, try and form sentences. Imagine things I could ask you in Arabic. How would you say them, etc. Okay, so it's quite important that you guys revise that. And also, if you can write the homework, that'd be very good. So it'll help you as well. It wouldn't take you that long. Yeah, but the memorization of vocab is very important, and all the words and everything. If there's any verbs that came in, you know what verb it is. And just how to form these basic sentences in Arabic, try and practice them in your own time. But we'll do a bit more practicing next lesson, inshallah.